If you are seeing this message right now, it is not by accident, not by scrolling luck, not by coincidence, and not because you randomly clicked on something. This moment was arranged long before you became aware of it, because there are certain souls on this earth who are guided rather than pushed, protected rather than explained to, chosen rather than included, and if your eyes landed here, it means something within you was ready to remember who you truly are, because God does not speak loudly to everyone. God whispers to the chosen, and only those with a prepared spirit can hear the whisper without it being explained to them. You have always felt different, even when you tried to fit in, even when you copied the behavior, the mindset, the dreams, the goals of people around you. There was still this quiet awareness inside you that said, "This is not fully me," and you could never explain it, because it was not arrogance, not ego, not superiority, it was separation, a gentle distance between you and the world. Like you were walking the same road as everyone else but on a different frequency, watching life instead of being consumed by it, feeling deeply while pretending not to, carrying questions that most people never even think to ask. Since childhood, you sensed things before they happened, you felt people's intentions without words, you absorbed emotions in rooms where nothing was said, and many times you wondered why certain environments drained you while others healed you without effort. This was not sensitivity as weakness, this was discernment being trained quietly, because God often marks the chosen early, not with blessings at first, but with awareness, with depth, with an inner world so rich that the outer world feels loud and shallow by comparison. You have gone through seasons where everything fell apart at once, relationships ended without proper closure, opportunities disappeared right when you thought life was finally moving forward, plans collapsed even though you did everything right, and during those moments you questioned yourself more than you questioned God. You wondered what was wrong with you, why life seemed harder for you than for others who cared less, worked less on themselves, and yet appeared to move ahead easily. But what you didn't realize then is that ease is not always favor, and struggle is not always punishment, because God prepares His chosen ones differently, not for comfort, but for capacity. There were times when you felt isolated even while surrounded by people, misunderstood even while explaining yourself clearly, unseen even while giving your best, and slowly you learned the painful lesson that not everyone can go where you are going, not everyone can hold the weight of your calling, not everyone deserves access to your inner world, and so God began removing people from your life, not because you were unlovable, but because they were misaligned, and each removal hurt because you loved deeply, but each removal also protected you in ways you only understood later. You are not chosen because you are perfect, you are chosen because you are willing to grow when it hurts, willing to reflect instead of blame, willing to carry wisdom instead of resentment, willing to forgive even when it feels unfair, and willing to keep your heart soft in a world that rewards hardness, because the chosen ones are not those without wounds, they are the ones who let their wounds teach them instead of poison them. Many times you felt called to something greater but couldn't name it, like a purpose without a title, a mission without a map, a pull without instructions, and this uncertainty frustrated you, because you wanted clarity, timelines, confirmation. But God often gives direction before detail, because if He showed you the full picture too early, you would either doubt yourself or run from the responsibility. So instead He trained your faith through silence, patience through waiting, and strength through endurance. You noticed how you could not settle for surface-level conversations, shallow dreams, or borrowed beliefs. You questioned traditions, challenged narratives, searched for truth beyond what was handed to you, and this made some people uncomfortable, because chosen ones naturally disrupt illusions just by existing. not by force, but by frequency, and that is why you were judged, misunderstood, sometimes labeled as too intense, too quiet, too emotional, too distant, or too different. But what they were really sensing was depth they could not access within themselves. You have a history of surviving what should have broken you, walking away from situations that drained your soul, rebuilding yourself silently after emotional earthquakes that nobody clapped for, and still finding a way to remain kind, hopeful, and spiritually aware. And this resilience was not accidental, it was cultivated, because God knew you would one day need a nervous system that could handle pressure, a heart that could hold compassion without collapsing, and a mind that could stay clear. Even when chaos surrounded you, there were moments you felt abandoned by God, moments when prayers seemed unanswered, moments when silence felt louder than rejection, and yet somehow, even in your doubt, you never fully disconnected. Something in you kept believing, kept searching, kept listening, because chosen ones may question God, but they never completely turn away. Their bond is deeper than emotion, it is recognition. Like a soul remembering its source even while struggling to understand the journey. This message is not meant to inflate your ego, because ego seeks special treatment, but being chosen means special responsibility. It means you are called to heal what others avoid, to see what others deny, to carry light into places that will not always welcome it, and to walk paths that will test your patience, faith, and self-trust again and again, because the higher the calling, the deeper the refinement. Right now, you may be in a season of waiting, confusion, rebuilding, or quiet preparation, and it may feel like nothing is happening. But what looks like stillness on the outside is alignment on the inside, because God does not rush the formation of those He intends to use meaningfully. He allows time to strip away false identities, external validation, and dependency on approval, until all that remains is truth, strength, and obedience to inner guidance. You are not behind, you are not late, and you are not forgotten. You are being positioned, and position often requires isolation, discomfort, and patience, because when the moment comes, there will be no time to prepare, only time to act, and that is why this season feels heavy, slow, and emotionally intense, because it is building something within you that cannot be rushed without breaking. If this message resonates deeply, not emotionally but spiritually, not as excitement but as recognition, then understand this is not flattery, it is confirmation, confirmation that you are awakening to your role, your responsibility, and your inner authority. An awakening is rarely comfortable, because it requires shedding old skins, outdated beliefs, and attachments that once felt safe but no longer serve your growth. And this is only the beginning, because once a chosen one remembers who they are, life stops making sense in the old way, and starts making meaning in a new one, where pain becomes preparation, loss becomes redirection, and silence becomes instruction. As you continued walking this path without fully understanding it, you began to notice that the challenges you faced were not random struggles but strangely targeted, as if life knew exactly where to press, exactly what to take away, exactly how to test your patience, faith, and identity, because chosen ones are not attacked for who they pretend to be, they are challenged for who they truly are becoming, and resistance often appears right before expansion, even when you don't recognize it in the moment. There were phases where you felt unusually tired around certain people, places, or conversations, like your energy was leaking without permission, and you didn't yet have the language to explain it, you just knew something felt off, and slowly you learned that your spirit was becoming more selective, more protective, more aware, because not everyone deserves access to a soul that carries depth. And God begins teaching boundaries to chosen ones not through theory, but through exhaustion, disappointment, and emotional burnout. You may have noticed that whenever you were close to a breakthrough, something tried to distract you, discourage you, or pull you back into old patterns, old attachments, or old versions of yourself, and this wasn't weakness, it was confirmation, because growth threatens what benefits from you staying small, and spiritual resistance often appears disguised as comfort, nostalgia, or familiar chaos, trying to convince you that staying the same is safer than becoming who you are meant to be. Many chosen ones experience a period where their intuition becomes sharper but their external life becomes messier, because inner clarity often arrives before outer stability, and this creates tension. You see what needs to change, but the environment hasn't caught up yet. You feel called forward, but circumstances feel delayed, and this gap can feel lonely, frustrating, and confusing. Yet it is one of the most important stages, because it forces you to trust inner truth over visible evidence. You have always felt deeply, and for a long time you may have believed this was a flaw, something to suppress or toughen against, especially in a world that rewards emotional numbness and surface-level strength. But what you are slowly realizing is that your sensitivity is not fragility, it is perception, the ability to sense undercurrents, unspoken truths, emotional shifts, and spiritual signals that others miss. And this gift becomes powerful once you stop apologizing for it. There were moments when you felt spiritually attacked not by dramatic events, but by subtle discouragement, self-doubt, procrastination, comparison, or a quiet voice questioning your worth and direction. And this is often how opposition works against chosen ones, not through obvious destruction, but through erosion, slowly trying to make you forget who you are, what you've survived, and why you started listening inward in the first place. You may have noticed how you outgrew people without conflict, without drama, without hatred, just a natural drifting apart. Conversations no longer flowed, values no longer aligned, humor no longer landed the same way, and instead of feeling relieved, you felt guilty, because you didn't want to abandon anyone. But growth is not abandonment, and alignment is not betrayal. And God often separates chosen ones quietly so they don't carry unnecessary emotional weight into their next season. There is also a pattern you may recognize where you give deeply, love intensely, support fully, and yet receive less than you pour out, and while this once left you feeling unappreciated or unseen, it was also training, because you are being prepared to give without attachment to validation, to love without needing repayment, and to act from purpose rather than approval. Something that becomes essential when your calling requires service rather than applause. At times, you questioned why your life seemed to require constant inner work while others appeared content remaining unchanged, but chosen ones are not meant to sleepwalk through life, they are meant to awaken, refine, and remember, and this process can feel heavy because awareness carries responsibility. Once you see clearly, you can no longer pretend, and once you know better, you are asked to live differently. Even when it feels inconvenient or isolating, you may be in a phase where solitude feels necessary, not because you dislike people, but because your soul needs quiet to recalibrate, and this solitude is not punishment, it is protection. Because when your frequency shifts, you need space to stabilize it before re-engaging with the world, otherwise you risk shrinking yourself again just to belong, and belonging at the cost of authenticity always creates inner conflict. There were moments when you felt called to step into leadership, guidance, creativity, or healing in some form, even if you didn't feel ready, even if you doubted your qualifications, because chosen ones are often pulled toward purpose before confidence arrives, and readiness is built through obedience, not certainty, which is why faith is such a central theme in your life, faith not as blind belief, but as movement despite incomplete understanding. You may have noticed that when you ignore your intuition, life becomes heavier, messier, more resistant, but when you honor it, even small decisions seem to flow more naturally, and this is because intuition is not random for you, it is one of the ways God communicates with you, not through dramatic signs every time, but through subtle inner nudges, discomforts, and quiet knowings that ask you to trust yourself even when logic demands proof. This path has required you to unlearn many things you were taught about success, happiness, love, and worth, because much of what society celebrates is misaligned with inner truth, and chosen ones are often called to walk against current trends, popular opinions, and collective fear, which can make you feel out of place, but it also keeps you anchored to something deeper than social approval. If you are honest with yourself, you will see that every major shift in your life was preceded by a period of discomfort, confusion, or emotional heaviness, and this pattern is not coincidence, it is preparation. Because before expansion, there is contraction, before clarity, there is questioning, and before purpose, there is purification, and you are currently somewhere in that process, even if you cannot yet see the full picture. And the most important thing to remember is this: chosen ones are not chosen to escape pain, they are chosen to transform it, to carry wisdom instead of bitterness, to bring light without forcing it, and to walk forward even when the path feels invisible, trusting that each step is being met even if the destination remains hidden. This journey is not about becoming someone else, it is about shedding everything you were never meant to be, and as this shedding continues, things will keep leaving your life that no longer match your frequency, and although this can feel like loss, it is actually alignment, making space for what can meet you where you are going rather than where you have been. And this remembering, this awakening, this deep inner recognition that something greater is unfolding through you, is only intensifying, because once a chosen one starts listening inward, life begins responding differently, challenges become teachers, silence becomes guidance, and even uncertainty begins to feel purposeful. As this awakening deepens, you begin to realize that your power was never meant to be loud, dominating, or attention-seeking, because the kind of strength you carry is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted, the kind that does not need permission to exist and does not need validation to move, and this is why life trained you in silence, patience, and endurance rather than applause, because your impact is meant to be lasting, not momentary. You start to see that destiny is not a fixed script written without your involvement, nor is it a random path with no meaning, it is a conversation between divine intention and human choice, and you were given awareness precisely because your choices matter, because you are not meant to be carried blindly, you are meant to walk consciously, and every time you choose integrity over ease, truth over comfort, and growth over familiarity, you align more deeply with what was always waiting for you. There were moments when you delayed your own progress out of fear, doubt, or loyalty to versions of yourself and others that no longer fit, and instead of punishing you, life slowed down, giving you time to reflect, because divine timing is not about deadlines, it is about readiness, and readiness cannot be rushed without consequences, so the pauses you experienced were not denials, they were recalibrations. You may have noticed how impatience created inner resistance, while surrender created unexpected clarity, and this taught you that control was never the path forward for you. Trust was, not passive trust, but active faith, the kind that keeps moving even when certainty is absent, the kind that listens inward rather than demanding external reassurance, because your path is not meant to be proven to everyone. It is meant to be lived by you. As your inner power activates, you become more aware of your influence, not in terms of dominance, but in presence, how your calm shifts rooms, how your words linger longer than you expect, how your silence sometimes speaks louder than arguments, and this awareness comes with responsibility, because influence without ego requires humility, and power without ego requires discipline. You begin to understand why your life demanded emotional intelligence early, why you were forced to mature faster than others, why you had to process loss, disappointment, and uncertainty before you felt ready, because the role you are stepping into cannot be held by someone reactive, impulsive, or unaware. It requires steadiness, clarity, and the ability to respond rather than react. There is also a growing awareness that not everyone will understand your journey, your pace, or your priorities, and this is where self-trust becomes essential, because seeking approval will dilute your direction, and explaining yourself repeatedly will drain your energy, so you learn to let your life speak for you, knowing that alignment eventually explains what words cannot. You may feel an internal pull toward creating something meaningful, whether through words, guidance, service, leadership, or quiet example, and this pull persists even when motivation fades, because it is not driven by emotion, it is driven by purpose, and purpose does not disappear during low moods, it waits patiently until you are ready to listen again. As you step further into this alignment, you may notice that old fears resurface, not because you are moving backward, but because they are being brought up to be released, and this can feel uncomfortable, even discouraging, but healing often happens in layers, and what returns is not meant to defeat you, it is meant to leave you lighter than before. You begin to see how much of your earlier suffering came from trying to fit into spaces that were never designed for you, relationships that required self-abandonment, environments that rewarded suppression over authenticity, and now that your awareness has expanded, returning to those spaces feels impossible, not because you are better, but because you are truer. There is a quiet confidence forming within you, not arrogance, not superiority, but grounded knowing, the kind that does not rush to prove itself, and this confidence allows you to move differently, to speak with intention, to act with restraint, and to choose your battles wisely, understanding that not every challenge requires confrontation, and not every disagreement requires explanation. You are learning that your sensitivity and strength are not opposites, they are partners, that compassion does not weaken boundaries, and that firmness does not require cruelty, and this balance is rare, which is why your path has been so intentional, because balance is learned through contrast, not comfort. At times, you may still question whether you are doing enough, moving fast enough, or living up to your potential, but these questions are not failures, they are signals of growth, because those who are asleep do not question, they repeat, and those who are awakening reflect, refine, and realign. You are beginning to understand that your responsibility is not to save everyone, convince everyone, or carry everyone, but to live in a way that reflects truth, stability, and integrity, so that those who are ready can recognize themselves through you, not because you chase them, but because your presence invites them. And as this realization settles in, the need to rush dissolves, the fear of missing out fades, and comparison loses its grip, because you understand now that your journey is not meant to look like anyone else's, and the timing of your unfolding is part of its design. This is the stage where inner power stops feeling like potential and starts feeling like direction, where uncertainty becomes curiosity instead of fear, and where trust becomes less about belief and more about lived experience. And you are still walking, still learning, still refining, but you are no longer lost, because something within you knows exactly why you are here, even if the details are still forming. You are not here to rush the process, you are here to honor it, because everything that delayed you also developed you. What left your life was never meant to walk with you into your future, and what stayed was strengthened for the journey ahead. Your visibility will increase, but so will your responsibility, and that is why humility was taught before recognition arrived. You are learning to use power without ego, wisdom without pride, and strength without hardness. Not everyone will clap when you rise, but alignment never asks for permission. Your path was never meant to be crowded, it was meant to be clear. Trust the timing, because divine order never arrives late. What you are becoming required silence, patience, and deep inner work. You were never forgotten, you were being formed. And now, you are ready to walk forward knowing exactly who you are.